Welcome to Stargrind Tech Creation Story. This is a place where we meet different companies that have developed a technological solution and brought it from an idea to a commercialized product. This seminar is organized in such a way that I will have a conversation with our guest for around 30 minutes. And if you have questions, you are welcome to write them in the chat and we will address them in a Q&A session in the end of this seminar. This seminar is also being recorded. I like to let everybody know. My name is Lina Sors Emilsson and I am one of the founders of Stargrind. And I am also your host at the Tech Creation Stories. This spring, we will meet 3 different companies. In March, we have already met Hubert, a company that is grown around a tech solution derived from a student project. In May, we will meet Tengai, a spin-off from a larger company that is founded to enable a new and complementary offer to their customers that is based on a robotic system. This week, right now, we will meet Symptoms, a startup with a tech solution developed from a medical need identified by doctors at the University Hospital in Uppsala. A solution to empower patient and caregivers interaction. What we will talk about today is how can one take an idea for patients' health and well-being to a technical solution? And what does it take to get this tech solution to the market where it can make a difference for both people's lives and the healthcare system? With us today, we have Emelie Gustafson, CEO at Symptoms, to share her experience and thoughts on how tech can be developed and commercialized so it actually can matter for patients and hospitals, and at the same time provide a revenue for the startup so it can survive and continue to grow and provide and develop its technological product to the customers and the end users. Welcome to Stargrind Tech Creation Story, Emelie.
Thank you very much. Very nice to be here.
We are very happy to have you here. I suggest that we start with that you introduce yourself and let us know about a little bit more. Who is Emelie?
Sure. So my name is Emelie Gustafson. I'm born and raised here in Uppsala, and I've had quite a long journey through academia. So I did my high school at the International Baccalaureate at Katedralskolan. And so I was pretty much prepared for an education abroad as well. But then I decided to stay in Uppsala because, you know, we have a great university here. Why go someplace else? So I actually started studying musicology. And music is a big part of my life as well. And I think that's a great way of connecting to other people. And that's something I'm sure we're going to talk more about, the team spirit, which is also very important in an orchestra setting or in when you make music together with other people. But then I've studied languages. So my focus has been on language studies, and I have my master's degree in English linguistics. And during these years at the university, I was also quite involved at the student nations, so at Vedala Nation in particular. And that's where I also met one of the founders of Symptoms. So I was the first curator at the nation, and we needed a new inspector, a professor or a teacher at the university, and we decided to elect Johan Sundström as the inspector, and that is how we came to know each other. And through that, and after I had graduated my studies and I worked a bit at the university, they started this company and also needed people, and thought that I might be a good person to involve in this project. So that's that has been my background and my journey.
Can you tell us a little bit what systems is? What
Yes.
do you do?
So symptoms is basically a digital patient-centered system for the patient to register and visualize their symptoms over time. So you could pretty much say that it's a digital symptom diary. Because when we meet healthcare, it's not always that easy to remember how you've been over time. And healthcare is, they ask this question, how are you today? And it's not always that easy to answer this question. And when you're in that quite maybe stressful situation as well, you're at the doctor's and you need to have prepared for that. So if you can support the patient to better understand how am I and how have I been, we think that will enable and facilitate a better communication in the healthcare meeting. And that's something that's needed. And another part that we think is really important is that there are a lot of systems that are very centered on one diagnosis. And healthcare today is also quite centered on that you need to you need to choose which symptom you're gonna visit healthcare for. But we are human beings, we're complex people. Often you don't only have one symptom, you have a multitude of symptoms, and maybe you don't only have one condition, you might have multiple chronic conditions. We know that as we age, we tend to collect a number of diagnoses. So we think that you need to see the whole person. And this is a way of also trying to support patients to create their own health history in place and collect all the data.
So if you would tell us, like what we will often talk about the customer's journey. So with the symptom solution, like very shortly, how would it look? How would a customer work with your tech solution, your web-based solution?
Yes, so it's a web-based solution. So mainly our thought is that you don't even have to be a patient to start using symptoms, because maybe you don't want to be in contact with healthcare. Normally we might not pick up the phone and book a time the first thing we do when we get a symptom, even if maybe some companies think that is the right way to do this. But you might want to follow the symptom over time and see that, okay, so now I've had this knee pain for a couple of weeks and it doesn't seem to be going away. Maybe I should book an appointment. So basically, as a patient, you can decide to use this just for your own sake of keeping track of your symptoms and your health status.
So it's like a journey you just follow in, and then you can have a history of how you've been doing over the days, over time, and the months and the years.
Exactly. And then the idea is that you can, if you want to, you can share that data with your healthcare provider, so that the healthcare provider can also have a look and see, okay, so how has Emelie been doing, and how has the symptoms changed over time, and especially with chronic patients with chronic conditions, it might be that they have these yearly visits, but at that particular point in time, that might not be when the symptoms are the worst. If they are the worst, maybe the patient even doesn't come to the appointment, they cancel it. And then when you arrive there and you get the question, how are you today? Well, maybe I'm good today, but it's difficult to remember how was it about 2 months ago. That's not always that easy to remember. So if you can get a better timeline and see the changes over time.
So right now I have two questions, and one is, how did it start? I mentioned that it was an idea from two doctors.
Yes.
And I'm very curious about how the journey started there. But yes, also, how come a person with a strong musician and linguistic got into this very techie world?
Yeah, that's two great questions. So if we start with the company, so Johan and Martin, who founded the company, are both medical doctors, and they did their AT, their practical training as doctors together. And they both have worked quite a lot in the emergency departments. And they realized that it was very difficult to understand the patients that came in late in the night. And at the emergency department, it's not only patients with that has a very obvious emergency, that you have put an axe in your foot or something like that, but it's a lot of people with pain, for instance. And they understood that it was quite difficult to communicate and to understand why did they end up at the emergency department at this particular time point. And then they also had this this idea, or this feeling that new public management, which was very much ongoing in healthcare, was also a big issue, that you measure time and money. But it was difficult to actually understand what provided a value for the patient. Did the patient get better or not? And if you don't measure and ask the patients if they're getting better, and at least if you don't systematically annotate somewhere if they're getting better or not, then it's very difficult to follow that information. And then it's very difficult to know if we're delivering care that's actually helping the patients. So they thought that we need better systems to also understand the patients and understand if we're delivering healthcare that actually helps them or not. So that was how this started, and that was quite some time ago. And in 2012 in Uppsala, we became the first place in the world where we could read our own electronic health records. And then they felt that, okay, so now we're in a very special place in the world where patients can read their own health records, but there's no way of for patients to feed back their own information. So how can we solve that? So that's how that started.
Before we get into you, could we just touch upon, this was doctors. So how did they do to actually start developing this technological solution?
Yeah, so they had a lot of discussions. The company was founded then in the end of 2015. So it took a couple of years before they actually started a company. They were kind of, they didn't really want to be entrepreneurs, but they were sort of forced in that direction. In part, they tried to get the region or the university to do this, take this idea and make something of it. But they were then encouraged to start a company instead, because of a couple of reasons. Partly because it's has to do with privacy reasons for handling data and patient data and what you can do with that, and also that it's also maybe not very fast tracked in healthcare. So it might be quicker to move outside healthcare, do this in a company setting, and then be able to deliver something to healthcare.
Okay. So how did your humanistic background get into the technology?
Yeah, so I think that's, the whole thing of having a mixed team, a team with different backgrounds, different from different disciplines, is really important to be able to get a good team and to get something good going. And my background then was that they wanted another idea or a part of the system is that it should be easy for everyone to use. And language is a complicating factor in healthcare. There are a lot of times that the medical doctor and the patient does not speak the same language, or at least does not have the same main language. And so the idea was also that we could use, that you should be able to use symptoms in any language. And that's still something we're working for, but it's quite complicated. So it's going to take time. But the main idea is also that we use these scientifically sound questionnaires that have been developed in science, so that you make sure that the patient is actually providing data that is interesting for healthcare to look at, and not just a free text diary, which we already have too much free text in the electronic health records as it is. So the basic idea was that they thought that I could come in and translate these questionnaires. So that was why I was recruited from the start. But this translation of patient-reported outcome measures, which is what these questionnaires are called, is quite a complicated process, and you need to be a team of maybe about 7 translators and project managers to make sure that these translations are correct, because it's very important that when you do medical translations that everything is correct. So quite early on, I had to say that this is not something that I can do. This is not good enough. So we need to instead work with existing translations or find teams that can translate. But yeah, that was how I came into the company. Yeah, and then for quite some while we worked as a lean team with no CEO and very much everybody working a bit. And then in the beginning of 2019, after we got our first founding round, then I got the question to step up to be the CEO.
So how does Symptoms look today? Who are working at Symptoms? So what kind of expertises are
so we have we have the medical expertise then in the founders, and they're somewhat active in the company, but not very much. And then we have the more technical team with people that have been working with patient data and quality registries and things like that. So we have that sort of competence. We have someone working with more the regulatory parts, because that's also a lot to think about when you're working with medtech. And then programmers. And then we work with, we have also a UX expert. So
UX is what?
User design. So someone who has a PhD in computer, human-computer interaction, who's also part of the team and works with that experience. And then we have different people involved in different different amounts. But we have some people working more on a consultant base, because that's also easier when you're a small company. Don't want to have that many.
So what has been from a technical point, since this is a tech creation story, so if someone who wants to go in and start a tech-based healthcare company who provides a healthcare product, so what has been the biggest challenge for Symptoms from a technical point of view?
That's a great question. So since I'm not the main technical person, even if I'm quite tech savvy, I would still say, but I think there are a few different challenges that you need to think about. One is interoperability, which is really a big thing in health tech, and that people talk about a lot. The challenge is when you have to exchange data between different systems, and how you're going to make sure that is something that works.
So how different technologies talk to each other, basically.
Exactly. And there are already so many different systems in healthcare that they try to agree on different technologies that we should, different ways of exchanging data that should work. But then I think one very important challenge is that there is a very big difference between healthcare has a lot of very high-tech data, but also quite a lot of or high-tech technology, but also quite a lot of basic technology, and still a lot of it is done on paper. So there is like a very big challenge to just finding the right level of innovation and right level of creating something in tech. So I would say maybe those. Also, when you try to create something like we're doing that should work for a lot of people, that's also a very big challenge, because you need to think about how can we make this as user-friendly as possible. How can we make sure that it works on all different devices? So we've decided to use a web application, so that you can use it on your phone, on your iPad, on your computer, and make sure that it should be available for everyone, because otherwise you're excluding people, and that's a very important thing also to think about when you're trying to create tech for good.
Let's get into the little bit more business part of this, because now I think everybody in our audience have a quite good picture of who you are and what Symptoms actually do. So for the commercialization point of view, could you just mention the business model you have today, and then we can go from there of how you came to develop that business model?
Yeah, so I think this is actually something that we're still not sure about how it will end up being, but basically we want it to be free for all patients to use. The base product should be free, because that's also how we drive usage and make sure that everyone can use it. And then there's quite a challenge also when talking about healthcare, because there are the way healthcare is paid for, and how different systems get paid and implemented. That's also quite complicated. So our dream would be that we would be available on a national level through 1177, through something called nationell patientöversikt, which is because since we have different electronic health records in Sweden, it's also difficult to integrate with all of these different places.
I know that we have some international listeners, so could you just mention what 1177 is?
Yes, so that's the national platform for health information, and also where you can, I think almost all the different regions have now connected so that you can read your electronic health record at this page. But as a citizen in Sweden, you can log in and you can see and read your electronic health record there. And also get a lot of information. Right now, you can book your vaccinations or and take tests for COVID-19 and things like that. So it's the main platform.
So basically, today your business case is that the region will be the customers,
exactly,
and the citizens, the end users.
Exactly.
And how is that working out for you?
Well, so that's challenging, because the regions they're very large entities, and it's not that easy to actually get access to healthcare. So we're also working with models where a smaller clinic could use this only for their group. But we think, I mean, as we see the greatness of this being that you don't only use this with one provider and one doctor, but that you can actually collect your entire health data. And then even if you go to your primary care center, and then you get to meet a specialist at a hospital someplace else, then you can actually bring your health history. And I usually talk about, for me, I'm allergic, and I think before I started working with this in healthcare, I thought, well, if I take the train to Stockholm and I get an allergic reaction, of course they have my information in Stockholm. It's only half an hour away by train. But Stockholm is a different region and they have a different electronic health record. So they don't actually have my information. So that was quite telling for me. I thought, we were in Sweden, we have social security numbers. Of course, everyone knows us.
Knows the information, especially nowadays.
Exactly.
It was different 10 years ago, but especially nowadays. Basically, you are still struggling to get the business model really running.
Yeah.
And who are paying today? Do you have customers or do you have investors?
So we have investors. And then we are also part of different science projects. So in that way, we're also getting some reimbursement through that. So
if we go into, giving advice and thoughts from your experience and from Symptom's experience of your journey of commercializing a product where you actually are still, trying to establish yourself on the market. What are your thoughts there, and what would you like to pass forward for companies who are, because you have been active quite some time now?
Yeah, I think that's one point, that you need to have stamina when you're trying to work with healthcare. Things take time, and I should actually say we also have one other customer base that we have right now is also the patient organizations. So we're also trying to see where can this data help in other organizations. So for the patient organizations, and that was also actually where we started talking to different patient organizations, and that was the patient organization for fibromyalgia. They were the first that gave us money to start the company because they said, we need this sort of solution. Here's some money so that you can start building. And now we're also talking to the patient organizations and then letting their patients use the system, and then giving them an anonymized report of how their patients are doing, because they need this sort of information for their work with trying to talk to politicians and tell them how their patients are doing.
So how would you define the patient organization and who funds them?
So the patient organizations are normally organizations that have members that have the same chronic condition, and there are quite a lot of different patient organizations, and they're very different in size. So there are very big ones.
Patient advocates.
Yeah,
patient advocates.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
And they get funded by donations and
membership fees. Also, quite a lot of them get some sort of support from the government as well.
How about interacting with private actors or insurance companies?
Yeah, this is something we've also been talking quite a lot about. So we think the private, even if we would like the national like the government or the national body to be a main customer, we think that maybe the private health companies are maybe the most interested in showing that they, because this is also a way of showing quality. If you're measuring how your patients are doing, if they're actually improving, that's something that can be very helpful for the healthcare provider to actually understand, okay, are we helping our patients or not? So that's something we're actually, and they're also a bit quicker than the
So this is something I often meet with startups and companies, and quite established companies also, providing med tech in some sort. There is like a trade-off, you have to survive as a company, but you would also like to make it available for everyone.
Yeah.
So how would you suggest that a company goes around to find out how they will fund their business, how they will get customers, how they will get revenue, and actually then be able to make this technology matters.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it's
so how would you suggest them to do that? Because I guess you have a lot of beliefs, and a lot of companies has this strong value, but you also have to survive.
Yeah, I mean that's a really big challenge, because I think most companies that go into this sort of area, medtech or medicine, you don't do it for the money. You're trying to do something good, but you still need some sort of funding to be able to survive. But I think maybe one takeaway could be that you need to prepare yourself that it's going to take time. So don't scale too quickly. Try to find models that work in a small group, and then try to build on that. But yeah, this is something that we're still struggling with, and we're still trying to find the correct way, or the ways that work the best.
So we are opening up for the Q&A. So do you have any questions? Just write them in the chat to me or openly, and I will bring them in to Emelie, and we will, let Emelie reflect upon them. But while we're waiting for questions to come in, I would also like to get a little bit of, where are you going? What are you doing next?
So I mean, that's such a great question. A lot of people also talk about, so why start in Sweden? Is Sweden really the best place to start? And that's worth thinking about. But we think, I mean, in Sweden we have quite a high digital knowledge in the population. We have personnummer, we have a healthcare system that is very good. But I think that the next step, when we're actually out with this product, and we see that it works, is of course to scale in different languages, and then also it's the product is globally scalable. That's communication issues in healthcare, that's a global problem. So this is not something unique for Sweden.
We are getting some questions coming in here, and one of the first one is, what is an advice you would wish to give to someone who is about to join a startup for the first time, not as a founder, but a founding team?
Great question. I think to understand, I mean, the team is really important. So make sure that you take the time to actually enjoy and get to know each other. And I think in a team, it's really good to actually have, I think that, I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but to have a team with mixed competences. So in a team, you might need some people that are really want to move forward very quickly, but you also need some people that actually are holding back a bit, and that come with different ideas and different perspectives.
So for a person who is about to join the founding team, not as a founder, what is the advice you would like to give to that person in this perspective?
Like make sure that you get to know the others in the team, and take time to actually understand and find your roles in the team. And it's okay to not agree on everything. That only strengthens the team, I think.
Phil here has a question. He writes, are people in other countries trying to create the same software service? If so, how is that affecting your plans?
So the thing is that there are a lot of companies that do like parts of what we're trying to do, but a lot of them are focusing on a particular diagnosis. So there are a lot of great softwares for instance, diabetes is one of these illnesses that has a lot of different tech, which is great. but this way of, we're also not trying to provide a diagnosis. We're not trying to say that you can fill out your symptoms and we're gonna give you a diagnosis. So we haven't actually seen these any competitors that does exactly the same thing in the same way. But we think, I mean, it's competition is always great because that makes you develop and just shows that, I mean, this is a big market. So I think that would be.
So what competition? What is your biggest competition today?
So there are
on a global scale.
I think. Well, I mean, all these different diagnosis-specific projects are competitors, and then we also see quite a lot that go from the healthcare perspective, that helps healthcare send out questionnaires to patients. That is also quite a big thing. But we want to turn the tables and actually make the patients let the patients fill out these things when they want to. And not when healthcare asks them to. So
yeah, we have another question.
Yeah,
please,
sure.
Please end.
So maybe like the biggest competitor is business as usual, not asking the patient. That might be the easiest part. Yeah. Yeah.
The opportunity to not use it at all.
Yeah.
Regarding this, what external, so Juan is asking here, what external factors are holding your company development back? What is the solution for you?
Oh, yeah, that's great. I mean, so as we all know right now, healthcare has a lot to do. They have a lot of things to focus on. And I think that is one of the main hurdles, that even there are so many great solutions out there that want to make things better and more effective, but you need time and energy in an organization to be able to implement something. And I think that is a big challenge, especially maybe in healthcare, because they don't really have time to sit down and learn about these new tools that are out there, because there's just so much to do already.
So what will the solution be for you guys for symptoms to actually overcome this challenge? So
we're working quite a lot now with the patient organizations, and we think that when we are able to let the patients also bring this solution to their healthcare providers and say that we need this, and this is actually helping me. And even, I think also, even if it's not implemented in healthcare, if we're able to help the patients communicate better and help the patients prepare better for the meeting, maybe that be also a great stepping stone to a more effective healthcare meeting.
So that would basically mean that you have to change your business model. And how are, going from being a region organizational tool, business to business, but going business to customer? So what will this mean for your organization, and how do you know if that is an option?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you just need to keep listening to the patients, hear what they want to, what they're willing to do with this software, and how they're thinking about this idea. And also, I mean, there are so many different ways of approaching this. You can, for instance, talk about like marketing, working together with well, maybe the big science funds to use that sort of income to actually provide the service for the patients. So I think, but it's a great question to like how do you know when to shift perspectives? I don't think I have an answer to that.
I always have this like thing that I say, like, who is your customer? And that is something that should go like that when you're starting the business. So who is your customer, Emelie?
Healthcare.
Healthcare.
They are the ones that we think are going to be
the closest.
Benefited the most from
but
this.
That is actually not
where
the
they
thing.
Can actually
who will pay you? That's the thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
Okay, Margareta has a question coming in here. It's a long one, so stay with me now. Thank you for presenting your company. I sympathize with the goals and the company, and I can see a true need for the product. We all forget how symptoms develop and when. I see challenges when it comes to the legal side. Who owns the diary, especially when it is on 1177, and who is responsible for the shared truth?
Yeah. Okay. So great questions. Were you?
And we actually have a few. Okay. So keep it short. I have 2 more questions I want to, and we don't have that much more time, I see. So keep the answer short.
Yes. Okay. So in our on the legal side, that's actually one of the points of making it a company. So the patient owns the data, and so it's a GDPR secured, and the patients decide that they want to share the data, and then the data is shared to a combined server that the healthcare provider can have access to, and when the healthcare provider can reads data from that, then it's read into the electronic health record, and then that's part of the electronic health record data. So then legal entity has that sort of data.
Yeah, but Margareta said, I lived in the US, and the problem if an insurance company would recognize a pre-existing condition.
Yeah. I mean, and that's an issue with insurance companies, and how you don't maybe want them to have access to the data. So that might be a difficulty. But no, our idea is that it's the patient's data, and they decide when they want to share it with someone, or if they want to keep it private, they can also do that. Yeah.
Follow up here. Another question: how general are the questions for different conditions?
Yeah. So I mean, the idea is that it could be quite general. If you look at like common symptoms in multi chronically ill elderly, for instance, there are symptoms like tiredness, so fatigue, dizziness, pain, anxiety. I mean, these are all quite general symptoms. And of course, there are going to be some disease-specific symptoms, but the main idea is that you as a patient decide which symptoms you want to actually follow and track over time.
I have 2 more questions I'd like to ask before we have the final one.
Yeah.
And so we keep it short now, and then if anybody interested to expand on it, they are more than welcome to contact you afterwards the seminar.
Yes, of course.
So how long would it take to keep the diary per day, and how do you motivate the patients to fill it in? It's also Margareta who asks this.
Yeah, that's also great questions. So the idea is that it should be very simple. So it shouldn't take more than a few minutes each day, and it should be easy to just say if something has changed, or if everything's basically staying the same. So it also depends quite a lot on the patient, because we're all different, and some patients might have symptoms that are very fluctuating over time, whereas some patients might not have that many symptoms that changes.
And some people won't be patients; they just want to keep track.
Yeah, exactly. And some people don't maybe want to keep track. We know that that's a really big challenge as well.
So we have a techie question coming in here from Ahmed. In most countries, the health system is not following the digital trend. How is your company will be shaped when you expand to these countries? Since usually they may not have personal number, 1177 platforms. What the technology challenge you might face in these cases?
Yeah, that's also so many great questions. Thank you all for these. I think that also depends on, then you need to look at every market and try to see how does this product fit here. And maybe in some countries, the fact that you're a mobile app or a mobile system might be actually very beneficial, because you're not as you might not have electronic health records even, but you might have the patient can have their own electronic health record or their own information. So I think the short answer is that it will depend. You might need to have to adopt to different markets.
Okay. Thank you, Emelie, for coming in today and for taking time. And thank you to everyone who was here listening and for all the questions. I see more and more questions coming in. So if you'd like to stay on after this, we can bring some of these questions up. But now I end this session, this tech creation session, and I welcome you all back in the end of May, more specifically the 20th of May, when we will meet Tengai and Sinisha Strabak, who is Chief Robot Trainer at Tengai. So thank you, and see you next month.